The conventional wisdom that your iPhone slows down because batteries just wear out is just a half-truth. When you look at the data, your phone slows down on purpose when the new model comes out, becomes undeniable. Apple isn't necessarily malicious, but they are prioritizing standard procedure over your individual results. What Apple discovered was simple: batteries degrade predictably. What they engineered was elegant: a software patch that made your phone slower without telling you. When your device stutters, you don't blame the manufacturer, you blame the hardware. You assume it's tired, but silicon doesn't get tired, it gets throttled. To understand the prevalence of this engineered slowdown, we have to identify the origin, which occurred in January 2017. On January 23, 2017, Apple released iOS 10.2.1 to the public. The release notes were terse: bug fixes, security improvements, nothing that would merit a second glance. But buried beneath those innocuous words was a power management system that would fundamentally alter how millions of iPhones performed. The update reduced unexpected shutdowns by 80% on the iPhone 6s and 70% on the iPhone 6. Apple framed this as a victory, but there was a cost they didn't disclose. Your phone's processor was now being throttled. The decision wasn't an accident, it was policy, and it came from the top. Tim Cook was already navigating treacherous waters in 2017. Apple had just experienced its first revenue decline since 2003. The iPhone 7 wasn't selling as expected. The company needed its existing user base to upgrade, but consumers were holding onto their phones longer than ever. The average replacement cycle had stretched from 24 months to 28 months. That's 4 months of lost revenue per device. Multiply that across hundreds of millions of users. Cook needed velocity. He needed churn. So when the engineering team pitched a solution to the unexpected shutdown problem, a problem caused by aging lithium-ion batteries losing their ability to deliver peak current, the path forward was clear. Don't tell users their batteries are degraded, don't offer a notification, just slow down the processor and let them draw their own conclusions. Let them believe their phone is obsolete. The throttling wasn't discovered by Apple's PR team or disclosed in any keynote. It was uncovered by John Poole, founder of Primate Labs and creator of Geekbench, a popular benchmarking tool. On December 18, 2017, almost a full year after iOS 10.2.1 was released, Poole published his findings. He had plotted the kernel density of Geekbench 4 single-core scores for the iPhone 6s and 7 running different versions of iOS. The data was undeniable. The distribution of scores for iOS 10.2.0 was unimodal, clustered around the expected performance level. But after iOS 10.2.1, the distribution became bimodal. Some phones ran at full speed, others were capped at significantly lower performance. The difference wasn't gradual, it was abrupt. Too abrupt to be explained by normal battery degradation alone. Poole didn't mince words in his December 18 blog post. The difference between iOS 10.2.0 and iOS 10.2.1 is too abrupt to be just a function of battery condition. He suspected Apple had introduced a change to limit performance when battery condition decreased past a certain threshold, and he was right. Apple confirmed it 2 days later. Here's the engineering reality. A lithium-ion battery acts like a fuel pump. The CPU is the engine. When the engine revs hard, like launching Snapchat or GPS, it needs a massive spray of fuel, voltage. Old batteries have high impedance, clogged fuel lines. If the CPU asks for fuel and the battery can't deliver, the voltage drops and the phone cuts power to protect the circuits. Apple's power management feature, the mechanism introduced in 10.2.1, acted as a governor. It constantly monitored the battery's impedance. If it saw a weak battery, it legally strangled the CPU. It forced the processor to run at half speed. An $800 flagship device was now performing like a $200 budget phone. The user sees lag. Apps take longer to open. Animations stutter. The keyboard lags behind their typing. They don't see a notification explaining that their battery is degraded and replaceable. They see a phone that feels old. There was no pop-up saying performance reduced to save battery. There was just silence, lag, and the inevitable walk to the Apple Store to buy a new device. When the story broke, Apple didn't confess. They spun. They claimed the feature was designed to smooth out the instantaneous peaks. They framed the throttling as a feature to prevent shutdowns. But just like Big Tobacco knew nicotine was addictive while testifying to Congress, Apple knew that throttling drove upgrades. The proof: the settlement. When the class action lawsuits hit, Apple agreed to pay $500 million. Later, they paid another $113 million to 34 states, including Arizona, to settle consumer fraud allegations. You don't pay $500 million for a misunderstanding. You pay it to make the discovery phase of a trial go away. This specifically hurts you by eroding your agency. You believe you are making an informed decision when you decide your phone is too slow and you need a new one. But that decision is being shaped by software you cannot see and a degradation pattern you were never told about. Apple didn't just throttle your processor, they throttled your ability to make an informed choice. The financial impact is direct. A battery replacement in 2017 cost $79. A new iPhone cost between $649 and $969 depending on the model. If Apple had disclosed the throttling and offered users a notification, your battery health is affecting performance, replace your battery to restore full speed, millions of users would have spent $79 instead of $800. But Apple said nothing. And in the absence of information, users defaulted to the most expensive solution. This is the externalization of knowledge. Apple held the data, you absorbed the cost. Why would the most valuable company on earth risk its reputation for this? Modern solutions prioritize maintenance over resolution. A problem fixed is a contract ended. A phone that runs at full speed for 5 years doesn't generate upgrade cycles. A phone that feels sluggish after 2 years does. Apple's revenue model depends on annual upgrade cycles. They sell iPhones the way pharmaceutical companies sell insulin, not as a one-time product, but as a recurring dependency. When Tim Cook testified before Congress, he was asked point blank, does Apple intentionally slow down older phones to encourage upgrades? His answer was technically accurate, but functionally misleading. We have never and would never do anything to intentionally shorten the life of any Apple product or degrade the user experience to drive customer upgrades. Notice the language. He didn't say they don't slow down older phones. He said they don't do it to drive upgrades. The motive, according to Cook, was to prevent shutdowns. But intent and effect are not the same. And the effect was clear. Apple settled the class action lawsuit in February 2020 for $500 million. Approximately 3 million users filed claims before the October 2020 deadline. They received $92.17 each. Apple's net income in 2020 was $57 billion. The settlement represented less than 1% of annual profit. It was a rounding error. It was the cost of doing business. And it was not an admission of wrongdoing. In November 2020, 34 states and the District of Columbia reached a separate settlement with Apple for $113 million. The terms required Apple to issue documents to be transparent about how it throttles performance. Translation: from now on, we will tell you we are slowing down your phone, but we will continue to slow it down. Planned obsolescence is not a bug. It is a business model. It has been deployed by light bulb cartels in the 1920s, by automobile manufacturers in the 1950s, and by tech companies in the 2020s. The tactics evolve. We have been trained to accept that the devices we buy will degrade faster than their hardware should allow. We've been trained to believe that 2 years is a reasonable lifespan for an $800 computer. We've been trained to upgrade on schedule. The throttling is not just in the screen, it's in your expectations. The next time your screen freezes or your app crashes, do not assume it is entropy. Assume it is policy. They own the software, but you still own the decision to repair, to refurbish, and to opt out of the upgrade cycle.